Stay home this Christmas, sweetheart. Your father and I miss you. My mother said that over the phone 3 weeks before December. Her voice had that specific softness she only used when she needed something. I almost didn't go. I had a bad feeling I couldn't name, the kind that sits behind your sternum and doesn't leave. But it was Christmas. And I had not seen my parents since my grandmother's funeral in October, where my brother had stood at the podium and cried beautifully, while I drove Gran to her final appointment every Tuesday for 6 months. I should tell you something before I tell you the rest. I'm a physiotherapist. I work mornings at a clinic in Kitchener and I pick up evening shifts at a rehab center on the other side of town. I do not own a boat. I do not take vacations. What I do have is a savings account that my mother once called obscene, because I have the same number in it that she has in credit card debt. My brother is an event coordinator. He plans corporate holiday parties and charity galas and things that photograph well. His wife does not work, which is fine, except that my brother makes $43,000 a year. And they live in a house that costs $2,300 a month to rent. The math has never added up. I stopped asking about it when I realized the math wasn't meant to add up. It was meant to be my problem eventually. When I pulled into my parents' driveway on December 23rd, my sister-in-law's Highlander was already parked sideways across two spots. My brother answered the door before I could knock. That was new. He always let my mother do the greeting because it made him look like a guest. Thank God, he said. He pulled me into a hug that was 2 seconds too long. We need to talk later, just us. I said okay. I put my coat on the hook and walked into the kitchen and found my mother at the counter slicing something, and she smiled, and the smile did not reach her eyes. Dinner that night was fine. My sister-in-law talked about a renovation she wanted to do on a house they were renting. My father watched hockey highlights on his phone at the table. My mother kept refilling my wine glass without asking, which she only did when she was nervous or softening me up. I went to bed at 11. At 11:45 I heard my brother's voice in the hallway, low and urgent, and my mother responding, and then a door closing. The bad feeling moved from my sternum to my throat. The next morning I came downstairs early. My parents' house is not large. There is a kitchen, a living room, a narrow dining area, and 3 bedrooms. The kind of house that holds secrets badly because the walls are thin and the hallway is shared. I was on my way to make coffee when I heard my father in his office, which is really just the spare room with a desk in it, talking to someone on speakerphone. I stopped in the hallway. I was not trying to eavesdrop, but I heard my name. She'll do it, my father said. She always does. A pause. A voice I did not recognize said something about timelines. Before the new year, my father said. It has to be before the new year. I stood in that hallway for a long time. My feet were cold on the hardwood. I did not move until I heard his chair shift. I made my coffee, and I sat at the kitchen table and I thought about what I knew, and what I did not know. What I knew was this. 2 years ago, my brother had borrowed $11,000 from my parents to cover a gap between leases. What I knew was that my parents had a HELOC on their house they had opened without mentioning it to me, and that my father played poker online in a way that I once called a hobby and now called something else. What I knew was that my mother had asked me 3 times in the past year, casually, like it was passing curiosity, how much I had in my TFSA. What I did not know was the shape of the thing. I did not know how bad it was. I did not know what before the new year meant. After breakfast I offered to drive my sister-in-law to the Sunrise Center to pick up something she'd forgotten. My brother looked relieved when I offered. Too relieved. My sister-in-law spent the drive talking about her renovation again, and I listened and nodded, and when she went into Indigo I sat in the parking lot, and I called my financial advisor. I know that sounds cold. It probably was. But I learned a long time ago that the window for protecting yourself is smaller than you think. And it closes while you're still deciding whether to feel hurt. My advisor picked up on the second ring. She told me nothing had changed on her end. I asked her to flag my accounts for any third-party inquiry and she said she would and asked if everything was okay. I said yes. I was lying. That afternoon my brother and I sat in the basement on the old sectional that had been there since I was 12. He held a mug of tea he didn't drink. He told me about the debt first. He said it the way you pull off a bandage, fast and without preface. My parents owed $87,000. The HELOC was maxed. The poker was not a hobby. There were 2 credit cards my father had opened in the last 18 months that my mother found out about in September. And there was a loan from what my brother referred to as a private lender, which I understood to mean something worse. How much? I said. $31,000 to a private lender. He thought he could flip it. He had a tip on something. I set my own mug down on the carpet. When's the deadline? My brother looked at the wall. January 3rd, before the new year. And what's the plan? I said. He finally looked at me. He had my mother's eyes. Brown with a slight downward tilt that made him look sad even when he wasn't. There's equity in Gran's house, he said. She left it to Mom. If they sell it, they can cover most of it. But it takes time. The estate isn't settled yet. Okay, I said. And they were thinking, he said. He stopped. He picked up his mug and put it back down. You have the money. You could bridge it, just until the estate settles. A few weeks, maybe 6. They'd pay you back in full. There it was. I had heard versions of this sentence many times. Usually it was smaller. Usually it was dressed in different clothes. Once it was, can you cover the property tax this month? And once it was we need a cosigner, and once it was just a favor, sweetheart, just until things settle. It was always just until things settle. Things never settled. Let me think about it, I said. My brother's shoulders dropped with relief. He thought that meant yes. It always meant yes. I had trained him, trained all of them, to believe that my thinking about it was a formality, a pause before compliance. What it actually meant was that I needed 24 hours. I went to bed early that night saying I had a headache. I lay in my childhood bedroom with its water-stained ceiling, and I did the math. 31,000 to clear the private loan. 87,000 total. Even if Grand's house sold, even if the estate settled in 6 weeks, I had seen how these things went. Grand's house was a bungalow in Woodstock. In the current market, it might sell for $420, $450. The mortgage on it was paid off, but there were legal fees. There were CRA implications on the estate. There was my aunt, my mother's sister, who lived in Nova Scotia and had not spoken to my mother in 4 years, but would absolutely emerge when there was an inheritance to divide. And my parents would want to keep the property tax on their own house current, and my brother would need help with his rent, and my sister-in-law's renovation. The 31,000 would become 87, would become 120, and I would be the one at the kitchen table writing checks while my father watched hockey, and my brother planned Christmas galas for other people's corporations. I got up at 2 a.m. I am a light sleeper. I have always been a light sleeper in this house because you had to be. I went downstairs for water and I saw the light under my father's office door. I stood in the hallway again. I was better at it by now. He was on the phone again. Different voice this time. This one was calm in a way that is not the same as peaceful. It was the calm of someone who does not need to raise their voice. She's here for the holidays, my father said. I'm handling it. The voice said something. If she doesn't, my father said, and then he stopped. She will. I know my daughter. He did not know me. That was the thing. He had a very clear picture in his head of who I was, and it was accurate up until about 14 months ago, and then I changed and the picture didn't, and he had been operating on outdated information ever since. I went back upstairs. I got my phone. I am not a dramatic person. I don't think of myself as someone who plans, but I had been a physiotherapist for 9 years, and one thing you learn in that job is that recovery does not happen by accident. You document, you date things. You create a record because bodies lie and memories lie and feelings lie, but paperwork doesn't. I opened the voice memo app on my phone. I set it on top of my dresser angled toward the door. Then I went to sleep. Christmas morning was almost normal. My mother made cinnamon rolls from a can. My father built a small fire. My sister-in-law filmed herself opening gifts for something I didn't ask about. My brother gave me a scented candle, in a scent I don't like because he always forgets. And I gave him a gift card and felt nothing about it. After lunch, my mother asked if I had thought about what my brother mentioned. I said I had some questions first. She set down her dish towel. Something in her face rearranged itself. Of course, she said. Is Dad current on the HELOC payments? A pause. Mostly. What does mostly mean? We've missed 2, maybe 3. And the credit cards. We're managing, Mom. I kept my voice even. I had practiced keeping my voice even. If I transfer $31,000 into your account on January 2nd, what specifically is paid and in what order? She looked at the window. The private loan. That's the priority. And then we reassess. That means the HELOC stays in default. It's not technically default. 3 missed payments is technically default. I work with insurance paperwork. I know what technically means. If they call the HELOC, you lose us. She was quiet. How much is the house worth? I said. We don't know exactly. Ballpark, $750 maybe, $760. And what's left on the mortgage? She looked at me for a long time. My mother has never been stupid. She is not an unintelligent woman. She married a man who made bad decisions and she loved him in a way that made her complicit in them. And that is a different thing. 412, she said quietly. I did the math in my head. Roughly 340,000 in equity. Enough to clear everything. More than enough. Then you don't need my 31,000, I said. You need to sell the house. We can't sell the house. Why? Because this is our home. I understood that. I did not think she was wrong to feel it. I just thought that feeling was not a financial instrument. Grand's estate, I said. When does probate close? 6 weeks. Maybe 8. And the Woodstock property. It's complicated. Your aunt. I know about Aunt Sandra. I said it before I thought about it. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. How do you know about Sandra? You mentioned it. She hadn't. But she didn't push it. That night I sat in my car in the driveway, because it was the only place I could be certain I was alone. I called my own lawyer. She's a woman I went to university with, a contracts lawyer who does estate and family stuff on the side. I did not tell her everything. I told her enough. I asked about gift law in Ontario, about what happened if money was transferred and never repaid, about whether a verbal agreement between family members was enforceable, about what I could reasonably do to protect myself if I chose to help. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, Are you thinking about doing this? I'm thinking about what my options are. Your safest option, she said, is a written loan agreement, notarized, with a repayment schedule and a security interest registered against an asset. They won't sign that. Then you have your answer. I sat in the car for a while after we hung up. The street was quiet. My neighbors growing up were a retired couple from Guelph and I could seize their porch light on. They had lived there since before I was born. My father had borrowed their extension ladder once in 2009 and returned it with a cracked rung, and when they mentioned it, he said he didn't remember doing that. I went back inside. I told my parents I needed to sleep on it. My father smiled. My brother looked at his wife, and the look was relieved, and I noted it, and I did not say anything. The next morning I got up at 6. I put on my coat. I took my phone from the dresser. I drove to a Tim Hortons that opened at 5:30, and I sat in a corner booth and I drafted a loan agreement. I am not a lawyer, but I have signed enough insurance documentation in my career to understand the architecture of an agreement. I laid it out simply. $31,000, Canadian. Repayable in full within 90 days of the settlement of my maternal grandmother's estate. Security interest over a named asset to be agreed upon. Notarization required before transfer. I printed it at the FedEx on the way back. I put it on the kitchen table when everyone was at breakfast. My father read the first paragraph. His face did a thing I had seen it do before, a kind of slow flattening. "What is this?" he said. "A loan agreement. We're family." "I know. That's why I want it in writing, so there's no confusion later." My sister-in-law looked at my brother. My brother looked at the table. My mother picked up the paper and read it more carefully, and when she put it down she had the look of someone calculating a distance. "The notarization," she said. "That's a lot. It's $40 at a UPS store, the security interest." My father tapped the page. "What asset?" "Grand's share of the estate, Mom's portion. A lien against the future payout." The table went quiet in a specific way, not the quiet of people thinking. The quiet of people who have just understood something and are deciding what to do with the understanding. "You don't trust us," my father said. I had been ready for this. "I trust you," I said, and I meant it, mostly. "I also trust that things get complicated. This protects everyone. If you pay it back, the lien dissolves, and nothing changes. If something goes wrong with the estate, we have a document. Nothing is going to go wrong. Then the document won't matter." My father pushed back from the table. He walked out of the kitchen. My mother watched him go and then looked at me with an expression I had not seen before, something between recognition and sorrow. My brother said, quietly, I'm not doing it without the agreement," I said. I kept my voice level. "I'm not doing it differently. If you want my help, this is what my help looks like now." Nobody signed that morning. My father went to his office. My brother took his wife to see friends. My mother cleaned the kitchen without speaking and I helped her, and we did not talk, but she did not ask me to leave. In the afternoon I drove to a value village outside of town and walked the aisles for an hour. I do this when I need to think. There is something about the weight of other people's objects, the donated blenders, and the board games with missing pieces, that makes the things in my own life feel more correctly sized. Before the new year. January 3rd. I thought about my father's voice on the phone. I know my daughter. He knew the version of me that wrote the checks. He knew the version that showed up and fixed things and did not ask for receipts. He had built his understanding of me on that foundation, and he was operating from it now, the same way someone drives a road assuming the bridge is still there. I drove back. I made dinner because no one else was going to. Chicken thighs with garlic and preserved lemon, a thing I learned from a woman I used to date who cooked the way other people pray. My family ate it without commenting on it, which was fine. After dinner my mother sat next to me on the couch, while my father watched the Leafs game in the other room. She spoke quietly. "Your father is scared," she said. "I know, he wouldn't tell me about the loan, the private one. I found out from a letter." She looked at her hands. "I've been scared too." "I know. Mom, we're not trying to take advantage of you." I looked at her. She believed what she was saying. That was the hard part. She was not lying. She genuinely believed that asking me for $31,000 with no documentation, no timeline, no security, and a family dynamic in which my saying no had consequences was not taking advantage. She had lived in that dynamic so long it looked like love from the inside. "I know you're not trying to," I said. "Then why?" "Because trying and doing are different things." I said it gently. "Sign the agreement, Mom. That's all, just sign it." She was quiet for a long time. In the other room the Leafs scored and my father made a sound. "If I sign it," she said slowly, "your father will be angry. He might be. He'll say you don't trust the family. He might say that, and you're okay with that." I thought about the Tim Hortons at 6 in the morning, the FedEx printout, the drive to Value Village, the phone call to my lawyer. The 14 months since I changed and the picture didn't. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay with that." She signed it the next morning. My father did not. He told me, standing in the hallway in his housecoat, that he had never been so disappointed in his life. He said the word disappointed the way he always said it, with the emphasis on the second syllable, like a door closing. I had been afraid of that word for 31 years. Standing in the hallway at 8:23 on December 26th, I found I was not afraid of it anymore. "Okay, Dad," I said. "That's all you have to say?" "I've said what I have to say. It's in the document." He went back to his room. My mother drove us both to a UPS store on the edge of town and we had the agreement notarized by a woman in a fleece vest, who offered us a pen from a cup shaped like a cat. It took 11 minutes. My mother cried a little in the car on the way back. Not about me, about the situation. I understood the difference. I transferred the money on January 2nd, as promised. I made sure my lawyer had a copy of the signed agreement. I made sure my financial advisor had a note in my file. I drove back to Kitchener on the 2nd. I had the 2-hour drive to myself. The 401 was quiet for once. The kind of post-holiday empties that makes highways feel like they belong to you. Before I got onto the on-ramp, I sat in a parking lot for a few minutes and I recorded a voice memo on my phone, just me describing the situation, the dates, the amounts, the names, the conversation in the hallway. I do this now. It is not dramatic, it is maintenance. You document the body because bodies change and you need a baseline, something to come back to. Something that tells the truth even when memory softens it. I don't know how the estate will settle. I don't know if my aunt in Nova Scotia will contest it. I don't know if my father will speak to me before Easter. I know my mother called me 3 days after I got home and said she was glad we did it the way we did it, and her voice had a steadiness in it that I hadn't heard before. I don't know what that means yet. What I know is that the agreement exists. My name is on it and so is hers. The lien is registered. If the estate pays out and they pay me back, the lien dissolves. If it doesn't, I have options. For the first time in a long time I have options. And that is not a small thing. There's a version of this story where I'm the villain. I've thought about that. I showed up at my parents' house for Christmas, and I printed a contract, and I handed it to my father over cinnamon rolls, and I made my mother cry in a parking lot in front of a woman with a cat-shaped pen cup. I know how it looks from the outside. I know how it might look to my brother, who texted me 2 days after I got home to say he thought I was being cold. I didn't respond for 3 days. Then I sent him the clause that specified the repayment terms, the one that protected my mother as much as it protected me, and I said, "This is what caring looks like when I can't afford to do it any other way." He didn't respond. He might not for a while. That's okay. People ask sometimes, usually people who haven't had to do it, why didn't you just say no? Why didn't you just refuse? And the answer is that saying no to a family like mine is not a single act. It's a practice. You do it imperfectly and you do it again. And each time you do it a little less apologetically. And eventually you stop waiting to feel good about it. You just do it. You drive home on a quiet highway and you record a voice memo. And you merge into traffic and you go back to your life. The one you built, without asking anyone's permission.